Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in less than 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. Today, trade talks, tech controversy, and 2 farewells. Plus, self-driving cars and flying taxis. Those stories and more in less than 10 minutes. Plus, hang out today after the news for a bonus interview about banning plastic straws. I'm Erica Mandy. Today is Thursday, August 30th. You ready? Let's do this. The U.S., Mexico, and Canada may be getting closer to making a new trade deal, and today is crucial. Remember, the U.S. and Mexico came to an agreement on Monday about reworking the North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA. But President Trump gave Canada a deadline of Friday, tomorrow, to agree or be excluded altogether. The Washington Post reports Canada's Prime Minister seems optimistic, but also said, quote, "No NAFTA deal is better than a bad NAFTA deal." Top officials from the U.S. and Canada are in Washington today for those trade talks. Stay tuned. President Trump tweeted a video that accused Google of promoting President Obama's State of the Union address on its homepage back in 2016, but not promoting Trump's State of the Union address. Trump wrote #StopTheBias. But several media outlets like The Verge say the video might be false, that it appears to show a fake screenshot of the Google homepage, but it's not clear where the video came from, so no one can really be sure. Google also says it's not true, that Trump's speeches were treated just the same as Obama's. Either way, there will be more tech talk next week. TechCrunch says tech execs from Google, Twitter, and Facebook have all been called back to Washington, D.C. to answer lawmakers' questions. They'll be asked about how they handle foreign influence on their platforms. At this point, only Google has not RSVP'd. The White House counsel is out. President Trump just confirmed Don McGahn will be leaving that top advisor job this fall. It's even more of a hot topic right now because of what happened 12 days ago. The New York Times reported McGahn has been a key witness in the Russia investigation, the one with special counsel Robert Mueller that's looking into Russia's election interference and any possible collusion with the Trump campaign. It's not clear what McGahn may have told investigators, if it helped or hurt Trump, just that he gave hours of testimony. Still, Trump says McGahn leaving has nothing to do with that. He thanked McGahn for his service and called him an excellent guy. Fox News reports people have actually been talking about McGahn possibly leaving for months. Today, there's a memorial service in Phoenix for the late Senator John McCain. Former Vice President Joe Biden will be speaking. And tomorrow, he'll lie in state at the U.S. Capitol. Former Presidents George W. Bush and Barack Obama will speak at another memorial service happening over the weekend. And yesterday, on what would have been his 82nd birthday, McCain rested in state in Arizona's state capital. Thousands of fans turned out this week in Detroit to pay their respects to Aretha Franklin. Fans told CBS News that yes, they're sad, but they're also there to celebrate her legacy and music that will live on forever. Her funeral is tomorrow. CNN says superstars like Stevie Wonder and Ariana Grande will be performing. Franklin died 2 weeks ago of pancreatic cancer. She was 76. All right, some other things people may be talking about today. California will become the first state to get rid of cash bail, for suspects to pay in order to get out of jail while they wait for their trials. NPR quotes the California governor saying the new system is supposed to treat rich and poor people the same way. He signed the bill this week, and it goes into effect in October of next year. Under the new law, suspects cannot pay to get out of jail. Instead, local courts will decide. But critics say the courts have too much say, that it'll lead to discrimination. And the bail bond industry says it won't survive this, and taxpayers will have to pay more. It would be the world's longest flight, and it could go nonstop from Sydney to New York or Sydney to London, for example. The more than 20-hour flight might be a reality in 2022. Bloomberg reports plane makers Boeing and Airbus have convinced the airline Qantas that it's actually feasible to do this. And so they'll both be working on airplanes for the job. Qantas is calling it Project Sunrise. It's not exactly clear what the interior of the plane may look like. Yes, it'll probably have the typical seats, but it could also have bunk beds, a gym area, and a bar to help passengers feel more comfortable on such a long flight. To be continued in 2022. Well, we've heard before that Uber's flying taxis will first launch in Los Angeles and Dallas, but now the company says a third city will go on that launch list, and it won't be in the U.S. The Verge reports Uber wants to launch flying taxis in one of 5 other countries, either Japan, France, Brazil, Australia, or India. Uber Air, as it's called, is expected to launch demonstration flights in 2020 and then start a paid program by 2023. And food delivery drones are also in the works. Another company is working on a new kind of self-driving car, one that has eyes. Yes, virtual animated eyes on the front of the car that will appear to look around and even make eye contact with people crossing the street. Jaguar Land Rover says it's testing the eyes to see if it helps boost people's trust in self-driving cars, because apparently a survey found 63% of people felt less safe when sharing the road with autonomous cars. So could these large animated eyes fix that trust issue, or will it just be sort of creepy? And that's it for the main news today, but it's now time for Thing to Know Thursday, where a different expert explains a different thing to know every Thursday after the news. So this week, we are talking about the plastic straw ban. Recently, the city of Seattle banned plastic straws in retail stores, and other major cities are considering it. There's even a proposal to ban straws across the European Union. Companies are also banning plastic straws. For example, Disney said it'll ban straws by the middle of next year, and Starbucks is banning plastic straws by the year 2020. We've heard a lot about this trend specifically this year. So why? Today, my guest is marine biologist and policy expert Dr. Ayana Elizabeth Johnson. She's the founder and CEO of the consulting firm Ocean Collectiv, and in the past, she's worked on ocean policy at the EPA and NOAA. The list goes on. Hi, Ayana. Thank you so much for coming on The Newsworthy.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
So I want to kick things off by talking about the city of Seattle just banning straws. Then other cities say they're following suit. And now we're seeing a lot of companies jumping on board as well, one right after the other. So why do you think there's this sudden focus on straws specifically? And is that the right thing to focus on?
When it comes to straws, I think a lot of the credit goes to this NGO, The Lonely Whale. They've worked really hard on their campaign to raise awareness about not using single-use plastic straws if you don't need one. And they actually partnered with the city of Seattle to get that ban in place. So Seattle not only banned single-use plastic straws, but also stirrers and utensils. So we're starting to see straws become sort of the example or the emblem of something that most people really don't need. And so an easy thing to eliminate and a start of a conversation about what else we can stop using.
Some people would argue that the straw ban doesn't really do that much, or that it's not only a burden on businesses, but other people like disability groups or people who need them for sanitary purposes. What would you say to some of those arguments?
For the disability community, this is certainly an issue. There are people who need straws. And so a lot of what the focus on is now is saying straws on request. That sort of solves that issue and eliminates the vast majority of straws that would be used. So straws are one of the most common items found in beach cleanups. So they are actually, a lot of them are getting into the ocean. Part of that is because they're so small and they kind of escape waste collection more easily. They're also really hard to recycle compared to other things just because of their size again. Obviously, it's only a small part of the problem, but there are hundreds of millions used in the US every year. So it does add up. And again, we've got to start somewhere, and that's a great way to start the conversation.
So let's talk a little bit about why the average person should really care about this. I know you've said that we'll have more plastic than fish in the ocean by 2050 if things stay as they are. So help us understand what that would actually do and what steps are being taken if it's enough.
It's 1 ton about every 4 seconds that enters the ocean globally. And so when we think about where all that's going, a lot of it is most of the plastic is washing out from shore, about 80% of it. And then the rest is things that are happening at sea. And so that plastic is starting to get integrated into the food web, because when plastic is exposed to salt, and to sun, it breaks down into smaller and smaller pieces. So a large portion of the plastic in the ocean is actually smaller bits than your pinky fingernail. So it starts to get eaten by other animals, and the chemicals that are in the plastic start to leach out into the water, and it gets into the food system. So we now have a situation where a lot of oysters and mussels and clams that are filter feeders, they're getting plastic into their bodies, and then we're eating that. We're seeing plastic in the guts of fish that we're eating, and we're not really sure yet how that's affecting the health of the fish and then therefore our health. So we even have plastic bits in our table salt and our sea salt. So it's not just stuff floating on the surface that's easy to pick up. It's something that is breaking down into what's called microplastics and then getting incorporated into the food chain. And whether enough is being done about it, I would say no, not at present. I think there's a lot that corporations and governments need to do to step up and be part of the solution.
So just this year, China started not taking our recyclables. Why is that, and what's the impact of that?
So China is producing enough waste of its own that they can't actually handle any more waste. And they're worried about the environmental impacts within their own country. So I think it's actually creating a very exciting moment because it's forcing other countries to figure out how to deal with their own trash internally. And so the United States, for example, needs to now figure out how to deal with the waste that we produce.
Final question, what can the person at home do about this? And can one individual really make a difference?
One individual absolutely can make a difference, and there's tons of things that we can do as individuals. So I carry my own water bottle, and I actually have this really cool titanium spoon on one side, fork on the other side thing that I carry. And over the last 10 years, I've saved thousands and thousands of utensils and water bottles. We use 1 million plastic bottles a minute. So anything you can do to help take down that number is great. We all have our own sphere of influence of friends and family and followers who we can help spread the word to. So that will magnify the impact of the choices that we make as individuals. So I think with the power of our vote, with the power of our voice and our influence, and the power of the individual choices that we can make to reduce plastic in our own lives, we can certainly make a big difference.
All right, so let's talk a little bit more about the perspective from the other side of this issue. Advocates for people with disabilities say straws are necessary for some people to drink. And the problem with the on-request thing is that not every business knows to have straws on hand. So some say if there's going to be a straw ban, there also needs to be another law that requires businesses to have some straws available on request. Okay, so then there's the plastics industry, who says plastics are often necessary for sanitary purposes, especially when it comes to food and beverage. And in Seattle, reports say most businesses were able to get on board with this ban, but for small businesses, it's a real financial strain to get these alternatives, the biodegradable straws. In fact, even some supporters of the straw ban say we do have to give consumers and businesses enough time to get used to these changes. So what do you think? Share this episode with your thoughts on Twitter and tag me at the NW Podcast. I would love to hear from you. I've also posted 2 news articles you can read about this topic in today's show notes at thenewsworthy.com. That's also where you'll find links to all of today's news stories mentioned in this episode. From the homepage of thenewsworthy.com, click episodes and then find today's date. Thank you so much again for listening. The Newsworthy is ready for you by 4 in the morning every weekday, so I'll be back with more news tomorrow. Have a great day.